everybody. Thanks for joining again. Especially thanks for coming back if you were here at the first session, because that first session can be a wee bit of information overload. It's the hardest one where we really need to start thinking about, what we want for our children in terms of experiences with digital technology, and we have to start looking outwards a wee bit at policy that's already out there, or different pedagogical approaches to think about, what is our starting point, and that can be the slightly toughest part, is just getting down a vision and our actions on paper. So yes, thanks for coming back, and like we said last time, if you have any drafts that you want to send in to share with us, feel free to do that. We are here to help. Okay, so session 2 is more about looking at just that, okay? Digital technology within your curriculum. We've said it before that there's no one size fits all approach. What might work really well in one setting might not work particularly well for you, and vice versa. You've all got different staffing teams with varying confidence and skill levels. You've all got different families, with different backgrounds that perhaps have different additional support needs. You might be located, not next to a school. You might be slightly more on your own in a more rural area. There's all these different things can have an impact. And of course, your children change each term, each year. And what might work really well for one particular cohort might not work so well the next time. So it's always a bit of trial and error. Okay, so just to recap for the people that weren't there last time, we looked at realising the ambition, the Scottish Government play vision statement and action plan, and we looked at some documentation from the Frobel Trust, some of their research highlights, just to try and give ourselves a feel for what is it, where do we want to go, what resonates with us here. And we mentioned that for your vision statement, you can lift quotes out of these different places, as long as you're referencing it. There's no need to be, really thinking, oh, how do I word this? These things that take time. If it's there and it makes sense to you, then you can by all means use it. So when we're thinking about technologies within our curriculum for our youngest learners, we're thinking about bringing meaningful experiences into our setting, okay? So it's the things that we couldn't achieve without that technology. So we're thinking sound, vision, thinking media, and it's things that are developmentally appropriate. So I'll quite openly say, when I was in ELC, that's 8 years ago now, if you'd asked me, what's a good example of digital technology use at early level, I would have probably said something, the B-box, coding. When we think about it now, some of these children that just turned 3, 36 months. For some of you might have younger children. What really were they getting out of using a B-bot? How much really did they understand into, why we have B-bots? And how often did you hear the wheels getting pushed along the floor? Because, movement. So I think that it's okay to say, that we don't always get it right, but trial and error, and, doing a wee bit of research, and, really taking it back to child development and what is appropriate for that particular age and stage is going to be, what the best experience that the children are going to have, because that's what they're going to relate to the most. So also thinking about practical uses of technology, and you'll see now in the reports that the validators, right, when they've had their online call with a setting, there's so many references or using timers when they're playing, just very basic everyday stuff that we take so for granted. Maybe don't always remember actually that is technology, and that's a really good learning experience. Just before we start to look at some of the examples, and I mention this in every session, and it is something that the validators look for as well, when we're thinking about these that we're going to have different examples of technology, or role play technology doesn't always need to be technology, and we'll come to that. What we always have to think about at the forefront is the safety aspect of it. And, you know, we do that day in, day out in any experience that we provide, you know, are there goggles at the woodwork, or, you know, if you've got, I don't know, STEM science experiments going on, do you have your high-vis clothing when you're out and about in the local community? Do you have helmets for the bike, you know, sun cream and sun hats when it's warm, you know, warm clothing in the winter? You're always risk assessing, you're always encouraging the children to manage risk. And I think as early level practitioners, it's just something that we do on the spot all the time. And we can transfer that way of thinking across into digital technologies as well, particularly if it's internet enabled technology. So we don't need to worry so much about, you know, lights and, you know, visuals and things like that. But technology such as laptops, tablets, or, you know, if you've got sort of other small screen devices, if it can connect to the internet, then that opens up, you know, a whole other load of opportunities, but also a whole other load of risks. Now, being part of a local authority or being supported by a local authority, the way that you connect and things is different from the way that you would connect to your Wi-Fi connection at home. Okay, there's firewalls and there's loads of other sort of risk prevention measures there in place, but we still really need to be mindful. So just as a wee quick example, and I'll tell you about something again from my practice years ago. We had a smart board and the laptop was connected to the smart board. Now, there was two different logins. There was a child's login, like a child's profile, there was an adult's login. For the child's profile, it was very restricted. Okay, there was lots of things were blocked on Internet Explorer, but on the adults one, you had more access. So we logged into the adults one because we wanted to share a video. It was, I've maybe told you this before, I can't remember who I've told and who I've not now, but Pam, you've probably heard this. And there was a Scottish theme, and we were showing something like, it was like the Glasgow tenement buildings, you know, a black and white video. It was on YouTube. It didn't really have any other media players to use at that time. Lovely wee sort of songs, children's voices, you know, images of children skipping and playing in the street and things like that. Stepped away, just slightly away from the laptop for a moment or two, and then of course the next video started playing, because I didn't know that you could turn off autoplay, or maybe you couldn't then, I'm not sure. Of course, a Billy Connolly video of Billy Connolly singing some Scottish songs, so very quickly, you know, I was able to pause that and shut that down. So it's just, you know, little things like that. It's great having, you know, instant access to all this media from around the world, but at the same time, you know, there's lots of risk involved there, and if we don't sort of do a risk assessment beforehand, you know, all sorts of different incidents can crop up, and that's the sort of thing that we want to avoid. All right, so I mentioned a wee bit there about role play. When children are exploring technology, it doesn't always have to be real pieces of technology. Okay, they can do this through role play and through technology toys as well. When we're making sense of what we're learning, you know, from things that we've observed in the world around us, we quite often we reenact it, don't we? We act it out. So it might be that the children have built a tablet, you know, from cardboard, or drawn one. My wee boy always pretends that he's got a phone on his hand. You know, particularly when I'm trying to speak to him about something he shouldn't be doing, he'll say, "Oh, hold on a minute, Mum, my phone's ringing." Okay, so all of these wee bits and pieces of, you know, what you see children doing, record them, you know, note them down, because that is them making sense of that, you know, bigger picture stuff. We mentioned there in the reports that the validators are writing down, they're noting down real everyday technology. So think about things like programming your washing machine, if you're temperature testing the fridge or the milk. Using the probe, you know, are the children involved in that as well? Lots of old bits and pieces of broken technology as well that you can have out in your garden, you can have it in your mud kitchen, you can have it in your sand pit. You know, it might no longer work, but the children will still be able to use it the way, you know, that it was intended to be used. Really simple bits and pieces. Now, I know a lot of settings have kind of moved away from the sort of more plastic, more sort of closed resources, and it's very much more open-ended now. But I always say, just remember the balance, okay? The real world has a mixture of materials. And, as long as, you're mindful of the balance, then having examples of things like that the children can learn through cause and effect from, touch a button, a sound happens. That's all part of the experience as well. It's just, again, being mindful of, what is on there, is the sounds it makes, or, whatever visuals it shows, is it appropriate for that age and stage? And again, all part of your risk assessment. The last picture there's kind of cut, but what we've got there was a Halloween sort of exploratory sensory tray, and in there were some really simple, it was like wee torches from B&M, just like a wee simple torch, and it had a cover. You could change the covers, but maybe a bat or a pumpkin or something like that. But all these wee bits and pieces that you can pick up fairly cheaply. If you have fundraisers and things, or parents are donating things. I don't know if we can still do that or not, but we sometimes would have a wish list of things that we were looking for to add to our resources. These things are fairly easy to pick up, and only cost a couple of pounds as well. So just being mindful about broken technology, toy technology, things we can use to role play symbolic technology, and your wee bits and pieces of sort of cheaper technology that we maybe didn't really include in our resource list before. Anything that the children can learn from by cause and effect, anything that we couldn't have that experience without the technology, I would put on my resource list as technology, if that makes sense. Now I'll be showing how old I am here. This picture in the middle, it's one of the Orchard Learning games. Okay, it's the app. When I first came into nursery, it was the tape that went along with these listening lotto games, and you had to always be winding it up with a pencil or a pen, because the children would always pull all the tape out it, and then it went onto the CDs, and you'll know if you were in nursery when CDs were around, how quickly they got scratched and stopped working. But now, of course, these games, they come with a QR code to take you to whatever app store to download the game. So, things like that are giving the children these experiences as well. Think about your devices, your built-in apps on your devices. So, for example, on the left there, it's just a screenshot of a mobile device using a measure app to measure a wee xylophone. Now, I will say, if you've tried these measure apps before, so you can get a measure app and you get a spirit level app, and it's really, really tricky. But interesting to give the children that experience, because a real element of balance and keeping steady is involved at the same time as well. So I suppose what we're trying to say there is think about practical uses. So on your devices, it's not all just for I don't know, taking photos, or you might have some games on there, but think about all the practical uses. And again, back to that balance. If I were having a sort of wee invitation for children to explore measurement, I would always have, a ruler or a tape measure or a measuring tape there as well, to show them the difference, and that there's a digital option as well. Just again for that balance. Some of you with the younger children, you might have a lot of these sort of musical toys, talking toys, sort of cause and effect play mats. Again, another fantastic use, or another fantastic example of digital technology. So thinking back to that developmentally appropriate, that age and stage appropriate technology, and your older ones have lots of fun with these as well. Then let's think about areas in your setting, or spaces in your setting, that you maybe didn't think you could have digital technology. Have you ever thought about having the probes at your water tray? Or, you probably will have had scales and things in your sand. But what about bringing lights over there as well? Little touch lights. Sometimes you maybe need to put it in a food bag, depending on what kind of light it is, when it's in the sand. But a lot of the time you can get these wee waterproof lights now. You've maybe seen them for in the bath, or lights that you can sort of float in a pond or a hot tub if you've got a hot tub, things like that. Again, fairly inexpensive, and a lot of them can change colour. Lots of really nice learning experiences can open up, particularly when you explore light and water. So I've popped some links on the slide notes for that. But the children they might not, they might need a wee bit of sort of questioning, but they might notice that the light starts to bend when it shines in water, and there's a few different wee sort of experiments you can encourage the children to sort of lead to find out, well, what is going on there? It's called refraction as well, just in case anybody wants to know. I'm just going to shut the door, just a second, sorry. And then we mentioned as well, broken technology. So that might be, old phones and things. It might be things that have been donated from your families. It might be things from your own house. If you have been assigned BBOTs, you'll probably recognise this picture, because quite often the BBOTs meet a sticky end, don't they? They either end up in the water or they end up in the sand, and they don't like either. So at this time, we used the BBOTs, the broken BBOTs. We used to call it the BBOT autopsy among staff, but of course, it was the BBOT tinker tray with the children to take them apart and find out, well, why are they not working? What's possibly happened? What could be inside? So we would have screwdrivers, little paint brushes or makeup brushes, magnifying glasses, and encouraging them to have that inquiring approach to find out, well, one, what's inside them? They don't work by magic, and two, why are they not working anymore? And just to add, when we do this or provide this sort of experience, again, we're thinking about our risk assessments. There are some things that aren't suitable to take apart, depending on what sort of batteries and things, or if there's like little sharp pieces of circuitry in them. And we've got a link to a really useful wee recording that'll explain, what's best to use and what to avoid. So the Scottish Schools or the Scottish Science Education Resource Centre over in Fife have guidance on this. So we've got it in a doc, but also in a video as well. So useful one to share around your staff and to share with families at home as well. So if this is something that you're encouraging at home, let's just make sure that the children are going to have a pleasant experience with it. Have you ever thought about digital technology as a loose part? Okay, I'll just let you have a wee read of this. So again, back when I was in ELC, loose parts were kind of always, or we kind of always thought that they had to be natural materials. Yep, they were open-ended, but they were all natural materials. Pine cones, shells, twigs. Sometimes we would have like old beans tins and things like that that had been washed and sanded down so they weren't sharp, and the children were using them. I didn't know that loose parts could include all of these things that we see here. And I wondered if you did as well. So next time you're restocking or planning your loose parts, think about, could we have something that makes a sound over here? Could we have something that lights up over here? What would the difference be? How would the children respond? So think about your wee battery operated fairy lights or little pop. The children could record a sound on it, could be themselves, or you could record, a mystery sound and have that in there as well. So it's still very much, keeping it open-ended as loose parts are intended for, but just think about, the different types of bits and pieces that could be in there, and, would that make a difference to the play? It might not, again, trial and error. So I'm going to show you a little example. So in here, we've got a little sort of a playscape. It's a suitcase. And in this little like hand luggage suitcase, and in the hand luggage suitcase there are loose parts, but there's some more sort of intentional pieces in here as well. So there's little fairy doors and there's little wooden silhouette fairies, fairy shaped little wooden silhouettes. So children had gathered up some of them. More of the sort of loose part stuff was added by the practitioners. And I'll just play the video and let you have a wee look. So as well as the little fairy doors and the little fairy silhouettes, all the other stuff was very open-ended. There was like sheer, your kind of organza, little scarves that you might use in music. There were bits of metallic material, all just wee offcuts, just, bits and pieces that, have been saved from, I don't know, nativity costumes, things like that, anything that can be recycled. There was a couple of wee makeup mirrors in there. There were some little twinkling battery operated lights. There was a sensory, what do you call them again? Like a sand timer, but with the oil and the liquid inside it. There was one of those. And the sound that you could hear, that sort of magical sound, was a talking button. And on it was a little sound clip that had been recorded from BBC Sound Effects with the children. And that was, doing a little search to see, well, what would it sound like? What would a little sort of fairy topia, fairy forest, what sort of noise would that be like? And, through different searches, I think it was just fairy, to be honest, on BBC Sounds, that sound was captured. Okay. The power of light as well. Okay, so just light on its own. Something in our brains, and it's all there, backed by science. It tells us that light and multisensory experiences like that really switch something on in our brain. And there's so many different examples that I could show you. Could probably spend all day talking about it here, but I've popped a couple of different links in the notes for you as well. So if you do want to do that wee bit digging, and find out, what is it that, that really opens up in our brain and helps us create those strong learning connections. I've got a couple of different links in there for you to have a wee look at. Things like laptops, projectors, digital microscopes, anything you can use to screen mirror and give that sort of, not just a projection, but just to give that, that really interesting visual can be like so intriguing for some children. A lot of it, you can, bring experiences virtually. Think about what Susan realised, the ambition, that we couldn't do without the technology, at your sand pit, whether you've got your sand on the floor or, on a tray. Could we have a projection of the beach? Could we have waves, sounds, on little talking buttons, all playing there at the same time? How much more immersive would that make the experience for the children? Picture on the left here is just a little DIY light box. So this one has just been made from a tray with a lid, and inside the box there's some battery operated lights. The bottom of the box is lined with tin foil and the lid is lined with, it could be baking paper, tracing paper, crepe paper, just something to give it that opaqueness so that you can't really see through. And then there's coloured sand or salt or something on the top there for mark making. The other wee light on the right hand side, I was going to say here's my wee one, but of course it's not there. I'll be downstairs somewhere, no doubt. That's just a little USB powered light, so it can plug into your laptop, or you can use a battery pack. I tend not to plug them into, a power source directly into the mains if it's something that children are going to be handling. But again, something for you to think about in your risk assessment as well. These little lights on the right, they were in Home Bargains and B&M and things too. They're called sunset lamps. some of them are just a sort of orange colour, other ones you can change colour, but they are such a, lightweight, flexible, sort of just really easy to use little light. They don't heat up or anything like that, and the children can really explore measurement, distance, shadow creation, and really they can use it to change the sort of whole mood of a space or an experience. I've worked with some children that wanted it on red because red was the angry colour. They were learning about emotions through Colour Monster. Other children used it on a sort of yellowy orange colour because they wanted the sun to shine. And they had, it was like a fly net from a pram, a white net. So they had that and they were sort of shaking that up and down. That was the clouds and that was covering the sun. And then there was also in the mix there a little battery operated fan. So the ones that you quite often you clip on buggies or you can clip it on your computer screen and things like that. That was also in the mix, and that was then becoming the wind that was blowing the cloud over so I hadn't expected that to be the route that the explorations went down. And so popping things out and just seeing what happens can be just as much a wonderful experience for you as it is for the children. Okay, so the Quality Improvement Framework, or our new QIF for ELC, highlights in various places the use of digital technology. So I've just pulled some examples out there onto that one slide, and I'll just let you have a wee read at it. So consideration is given how children can deepen their learning with and through technology. So if you think way back to the example in realising the ambition about the torch, okay, the learning with, switching the torch on and off, that's what it does, and then the learning through, how much deeper could children take what they were doing with the torch. So for example, was it discovering shadows? Was it learning about transparency? Was it being able to shine through the leaf and see all the veins on the leaf, and all those other examples that's in there as well. There's quite a lot of emphasis in wellbeing, inclusion and equality. There's so many different examples of where technology can support our children through accessible spaces as well, and we will come to that. We're talking about targeted support too. So, you might be thinking about things like translation, whether it's for your children or for the families, and all the different tools there, or it might be, visual supports. And then the part about staff making use of technology to enable every child to participate fully, thinking about how you make things really personalised for individual children as well. So it might be, things that you've got between home and nursery. It could be voice recordings, it could be videos, it could be little sort of visual now and next boards, it could be videos, it could be created on photo, it could be voice, just whatever the children respond to the best. And again, a lot of that's just going to be completely through trial and error. So some of the things that you might want to record as your evidence here, so everything basically that we spoke about, absolutely everything, any observations, any photographs, any examples of where that technology is being used, screen grab it, screenshot it, do whatever it is that you do to keep track of everything. And it might also be things like this. So if you have stay and play sessions and you have families in, did they have a wee try out of anything? It might be home learning, so you might be, encouraging, children at home to, spot the digital technology in their homes. Where's your sort of feedback or your evidence of that? It could be, a photograph or a video recording of things like the talking buttons in action. So as well as, using them as a sort of prompt to record an interesting sound, flip that around and the children can use them to leave reviews, if you're evaluating a certain space or, something like snack we can use them there as well. And that again then is encouraging that early language and communication. Could be specific pages in your floor books, or observations in your learning journals. When we speak about the risk assessing, if you're linking Samoa to other areas in your setting, can we link the key points of Samoa, the things that we need to check against digital technology as well? And then there's just a few other things that we've popped on there too, like your planning, your whether it's daily diaries or however you do your planning. Again, wee screenshots, wee photographs from there too. Now, we've said before about the balance, but just to mention it again, and something that's really key to the Digital Schools Award framework for ELC is it's not a digital first approach. Okay, it's a considered approach, and it's all about the balance. So that's key. For some children, they really respond, to certain sounds, certain noises. For other children, that overstimulation, that overwhelm might just be too much. So it might be a case of, there's certain times or there's certain areas where you don't have things that make a noise, or you don't have things that light up. And that's, that's okay to do that, because it's you that know your children best at the end of the day, and you know what they respond to. So please don't think it has to be a sort of all singing, all dancing, all digital, all day, every day. Absolutely does not. And I think because now we really understand more what is developmentally appropriate technology, that's made that a wee bit easier. So we mentioned about accessible spaces and experiences. Okay, so some of this might look familiar to you. Some of you might be using, depending on what you've got access to. Oh, well, that went well. The symbols aren't actually on it. I was going to show you the little symbols. Where are they? That'll have been my wee boy in here again. He's getting the blame for everything today, but it absolutely will have been him. So we had some board maker symbols here. In fact, this one's also got them, on the lanyard as well. But, the board making symbols, you'll be on creating them, you'll be making them. And although they're, paper copies that you maybe wear around your neck or you have up on the wall somewhere, there was still an element of digital technology involved for you to be able to do that, to support that child. So remember to include things like that as well. For some of you, you might just have visuals, for all children in your nursery. And, again, is that something the children were involved in? Were you taking pictures together? Were they recording the audio to go along with it? Perhaps you have a wee element of translation in there as well for your children that have English as a second or additional language. I remember having to reach out to parents to help with the translation as well. So they would come in and do the recordings for us to make sure that we got, the translation correct. Because at the time, I think we would use things like Google Translate, and it wasn't always, really that bit accurate, or it would, say things sort of back to front of things. So making sure that you've got the sort of accurate translation there too. And a wee picture again of the talking buttons, because they are, one of the most simple but effective pieces of technology that you can have in your setting. And just, I forgot to mention about them, but just on that risk assessment part with them, just be mindful of, any adult conversation. So if, the children are sort of freely exploring them and recording, and you're maybe discussing, whatever a child's next steps or whatever in the background, and that, might be recorded. So it's just making sure that you sort of count them all in at the end of the day, and, you wipe them, because they are quite small and they can go home in pockets. And when I requested some for the kit that I have when I go out and visit, on visits, the Information Security Officer for Education Scotland actually asked me what I wanted to do with them, because, they could be used to record sensitive information. So just be mindful of that. I mean, I'm sure if I was going out to spy on anybody anywhere, I would use something a wee bit more sophisticated, but just be mindful, because they are wee and they can go in pockets. Now, yesterday, we had a read along with Joanna Courtney from Call Scotland. So that's where we offer a sort of national, anyone can join, come along and listen to a story with the children. but it's an accessible read along. So at the same time as the story being read, we use a lot of visuals as well and a lot of audio. So I will send you the link, but if you're not aware, there is, and I've not got this set up to share my screen directly across here, but there is an app called Sounding Board, and that's looks like this. Okay, it's open. No, wait, hold on. Maybe I need to take my background off, won't I? Let's see. Camera. That's camera off. Well, do you know what? I'll turn this one on. That's what I'll do. Hold on. Okay, so it's got different boxes for different symbols, and they all come with a wee recording. So Call Scotland actually make all these symbols to coincide with the book bug bags. Passcode. So this one is for the bongles, in particular. The app's called Sounding Board, and it's a free app that you can download, and then you can download the files to go with all the book bug books that are out for the Nursery Explorer bags and the Primary 1 family bags. So it just gives, again, children just another wee layer of support there with the audio and the visual, just to, cement in that learning. Now, you don't have to use them with an app. You can print them out as well, and you can have them just like on the screen here as the visuals. You also create accessible versions of the books. So, for example,
sorry, could I ask what was the name of the app so I can write it down?
Sorry, yeah, it's called Sounding Board, and I'll make sure you've got all these links as well so that you can download them.
Thank you.
No worries. And you can make your own visuals to go in them as well. It's a wee bit like some children you might have seen using a GoTalk, the actual accessible communication device that you carry. This one's very similar, but it's on a free app. And then particularly if the children have got devices at home, the files can then be shared at home so that they're getting that learning consistently at home as well. So yeah, so as well as those symbols, we also make all the books into accessible PowerPoints so that you can play them on Read Aloud. And they have the recordings of the audio on there as well. So that is Call Scotland. They're based at Edinburgh University. I've popped all the links in the slides. I've got absolutely loads of resources. We had a read along yesterday or the day before, but we've got another one coming up in December. And this one, as well as a read along, it's going to be a sing along and a sign along as well. So the book of choice for this read along is going to be My Pet Star, which is actually in the Primary 1 bags that are going out, I think, this week, Book Week Scotland Week. But we'll also be singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star together, and then we've provided the link for the Makaton symbols or instructions for Twinkle Twinkle Little Star as well. Singing Hands Makaton is what I should say. So yeah, things like that, come and join them. That's a great example for your evidence as well. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just have a wee look at what evidence might actually look like. So we've got a couple of examples to show you today. One from Quarry View in Dundee and one from Jigsaw in North Lanarkshire. So they're both organised a wee bit differently. And it's really up to you how you want to organise yours. I'm sure they've both used Sway. That's just something that, they're comfortable with. But you can organise yours, whether it be a PowerPoint, book creator. It might even be a OneDrive folder, with different folders then inside with all your images and things in them. However, you already organise information, whatever works best for you, do that without giving yourself, an additional stress of, learning a new app or website or programme. Right. To share a screen now. There we go. So We've got Quarry View here. This is our setting up in Dundee. You should be able to see that now. So what I quite like about this one is they've organised it, they've organised it into chapters or sections, if you like, okay? So they've got the introduction part and then they've organised it into each section of the framework. For me, that's quite logical because then you can see, you know, what you've got for each section. Of course, you get loads of overlap, you know, things that might go, you know, in one section. So for example, your planning, you know, that could be in leadership and vision, but it could also be in curriculum. It could also even be in resources as well, because, you know, you might be talking about the specific resources that you're going to use. So there's lots that can overlap. It's just really getting the time to think, well, you know, what would be best where, and having a wee look to see if there's gaps, and then maybe moving things around. And Sway's really good to let you do that, as is Book Creator, you know, as is PowerPoint, OneDrive folders, you know, however you want to do it. So let's just have a wee look here. We're going to jump to section 2. Let's look at what Quarry View put together as evidence technology into their curriculum. Now you will get the links to these. The links are on the slide, so don't worry if you can't see too much just now, but you'll have time to go back through and have a wee look at how they've organised everything. Okay. And also don't worry about planning and things if it looks different from yours, because believe me, I have discovered every local authority does things very, very differently. There's absolutely no one size fits all model here. So here we've got some examples of some planning and the form that's been used here. And then we've got like our daily diaries, or it might be weekly diaries, you know, of the different types of experiences the children had. And what they've done is, as well as take a photograph of the pages, they've highlighted the digital elements just to make it stand out that wee bit more to the validator. And then the same with floor books, pictures from floor books. And then they've got some screenshots from sort of digitally based activities that the children were doing on the devices. So there's some chatter pics there, there's some whiteboard drawings, and then just some photos of the children actually exploring pieces of technology themselves. In curriculum, they also talk about how they record learning. So they've got examples of what they use and how they use it. So they've got some wee snippets here from Seesaw. And then how they announce things to their families as well. So this wee example here is an app suggestion. So they were looking at different paint apps in nursery, and they've popped on a link to a CBB's Get Creative, just completely free, as you know, CBB's online place. And then a wee example of how to use it. And at the same time, this will come later on, I'm sure, but at the same time they would have guidance about cyber resilience and internet safety. And so just making sure that when the children were online, that, you know, an adult was beside them and they weren't sort of being left to their own devices, if you like. And that was some voice recordings they had there. So they have for supporting parents with English as an additional language. There's an element, I didn't know this, but in Seesaw there's a translate element. So we're using that to be able to effectively communicate with one of those families. Okay, then just some more, this is their sort of longer term planning for the term. Some more examples in there. And then a screenshot of how they use forms to capture feedback from their families. Okay, so not going into huge detail, just a screenshot of the different forms that they've got, because remember the validator can ask you more questions, so you don't need to take, you know, too much time going into all the minute details. As long as you can give, you know, quite a clear overview, then they can ask you more about that on the call. And here it is there, as I knew it was part of this one. So the strategies for encouraging the wee ones to learn more about staying safe when they're online. So this is just pictures of the resources they use, whether it's a hard copy book, whether it's a website, and then some pictures from activity where the children were mark making and sort of retailing what they had learned from the story. And I'll now just show you an example from Jigsaw. So this one's in North Lanarkshire. So again, this one's this way, organised slightly differently. And it's like we said, there's no one size fits all. There's no right or wrong way. It's, however you're used to organising your information already, what's going to give you the least work. We are finding the biggest stumbling block for settings to go forward to apply for their validation is just getting the time to organise their evidence. So the evidence is there, everything's happening, but it's getting that time to be able to sit and, get it in some sort of order that makes sense to you, but will also make sense to the validators as well. Okay, so they've just started with lots of nice pictures of the different resources that they have, or different experiences that the children have been doing. So this one's a wee bit different. There's a lot of green screen QR codes and things like that going on. They've got some programmable toys there as well. And then they go into their policy. So there's a wee screenshot of that. But what I really quite like about this one is the consultation with children. So they created their own safety rules for looking after and using the digital resources. So I don't know if you can see it. I'll see if I can pull this one up. Okay, so really child friendly, really sort of practical. Like the don't in capitals if the toy has a remote control. We don't push it along. I still can hear the bebop wheels crunching when I think about that. And then putting everything away when they're finished, just encouraging that responsibility, because lots of these things, they can be expensive. And we want to really encourage the children to use them responsibly and understand that, if we don't use them responsibly, then, they're gone and, we might not always be able to get them back, which can be easier said than done, I know. One of their other goals were to reduce paper use. So this would be, from going from paper copies, newsletters or paper journals, to sort of digital versions, although there's always still a place, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me, but there's always still a place for children to be able to go to mark make and to be able to instantly revisit their learning. So, flow books and learning walls and things like that, you could never take them away. Else have we got here? So they've used the visuals here to help some children understand the safety rules and their acceptable use policy. So again, they've had to go to digital technology to enable that to happen. They've screenshotted and showed where they've gone online for support for CPD and the resources that they use to help children learn about cyber resilience and internet safety. So Evidence Me is their sort of information sharing, learning journally place. And then at the bottom there, just some wee snippets from the report. So that's just a sort of contrasting, both of those kind of contrast each other. One's got loads of information and it's organised in the key areas of the framework, whereas the other one isn't and doesn't have as much, but has a lot of photographs, and you can still see there's lots going on. And then when the validator made the call, they were then able, to ask many more questions. And of course, that setting were also awarded. Okay, let's go back to. Here we go. Back here. So just a few report highlights. Yeah, in the time. So this one is from Castle Milk, and this is in Glasgow. This is from 2019. So this is looking at technology within the curriculum. Okay. can see that could also be in culture as well. You know, that could be in set and culture. It's you know, there's loads of overlap, but that is the nature of ELC, isn't it? Nothing's ever done in isolation. You know, all areas of the curriculum all merge together. And then this one is from Katrine. This is East Ayrshire. This was last year. I think this is my favourite ever report snippet so far. Just makes me laugh. See the sort of the role play, the imaginary play coming through there, and everyone getting involved. You can just imagine, you know, the faces, the shock, the horror when they find the member of staff under the desk eating all the biscuits. Absolutely love that one. So again, that one was in curriculum, but very easily could have been over in culture. Could also have been in leadership and vision. You know, they had the you know, the freedom to be able to do that. And then this one's Polly Allen. This one's 2019. This one's up in Fife. Again, really noticing the support for cyber resilience and internet safety. Okay, so just a few more things from me there before we finish up. So just when you are making some considerations for the types of experiences that you offer in your curriculum or that you encourage as part of learning at home, a few sort of useful things to consider and links to share. So we'd mentioned in the report there from Quarry View and Dundee that, you know, they would try encouraging us to try at home via CBeebies. It was a Get Creative link that they'd popped in the Learning Journal. But then I remember just like at the same time they also spoke about, you know, the safety impact of that as well. Here the Frobo Trust have published a little research highlight, and the term joint media engagement is highlighted in it. So this is a really useful one to share with your families at home. And you know, all it's really saying, it's really sensible. But if children do have sort of screen time, it's always making sure that there's somebody there with them. You know, really practical, really sensible, whether it be an older sibling or an adult. And it's not just for the safety element, but it's for that language and communication element as well. Okay, so it's not becoming a passive activity that the kids zoned in on. There's somebody there, you know, to encourage that language development, that communication, that social interaction. When you are thinking about apps and things or websites, a really sort of useful way that I sort of think about things is, you know, well, you know, what do I want for the children here? So we think about open versus closed content. So open content experiences are things like your whiteboard recordings, whiteboard arty places. I think about them as I would think about loose parts. You know, the children can kind of do what they want with the tools in there. There's no predetermined outcome. There's no right way to do something. Whereas your closed content games, so I'm thinking just off the top of my head, you know, something like the Bebot app or something, you know, like on CBeebies where you've got to do it a certain way, you know, to win or to get to the end. I think about them a wee bit more like worksheets, all right there. Usually quite handy for, you know, mastery. So if it's maybe shape, letter, number recognition, you know, a game that kind of encourages that. So two different types to think about there. And then let's think about fine and gross motor skills as well, because the very same website or app can, promote two different types of physical development. If it's on the wee screen, and it's fine motor control, but then if it's on the bigger panel, we're thinking about gross motor control. For some children, it might be balance and crossing the midline as well. So just lots of wee things there to bear in mind when you are thinking about the experiences that are on offer. And then a couple of links there. Now, we're not promoting these. We're not like working with any of these companies or anything like that. These are just a list of links that I've collated, that I've captured from other settings when I've been out and about, of the bits and pieces of technology that they're using. Okay, so things like the light, some things like the talking buttons, the particular box that was used to make the DIY light box that then meant that could go outside, and things like that, just to give you a rough idea of what they might be called and what their prices are. And then if you do get a chance, I cannot recommend this recording anymore. It was recorded about a month and a half ago now, with Nikki Buchan of Natural Learning. Some of you might recognise the name Nikki Buchan. She worked with mind stretchers all those years ago, when the Talking and Thinking floor books and the Talking and Thinking tubs and things like that were all being introduced, and all the sort of importance of outdoor play. And she has done this wonderful recording for us. She recorded it from South Africa, or she joined the call from South Africa, and she talks about just the magical wonders that children can experience when they have a mixture of exciting and freely available natural resources and digital resources that they can work with together. So many lovely examples in there of different explorations with reflection and light. She's got lots of lovely photos from her own experience as well, and she talks about some really practical examples. She talks about digital literacy being most effective and meaningful when it's relevant to young children. So again, just thinking back to that child development considered approach, what's hands-on, what's really going to spark interest, and I suppose really thinking beyond the screens, because I don't think we really spoke about screen-based activity or experiences there till quite far in. Oh, and that was me, that was my voice there. So just to finish up, supposed to be discussion time. I'm here for it if anybody does want to ask anything or discuss anything, but I just wanted to leave you with this wee quote to sort of ponder on before we come back to the next one. So this is from Nursery World, and it was titled, "Why Should We Be Embracing Screen Time?" Okay, because there's a big panic, isn't there, about screen time, and rightly so, when screens aren't being used effectively, or children don't have the support. But anyway, the quote says, "We need to move beyond the fear of technology and instead focus on its potential to enhance learning. Early year settings are perfectly positioned to introduce children to the world of technology in a way that is playful, exploratory and developmentally appropriate. Whether children are pressing buttons, exploring light and shadows, or engaging with a screen, technology can be a valuable aspect of children's learning and development. Think activity first, technology second, to ensure that the child and their needs is always the priority." I really love that. That might be your vision statement. You might want to use that. The link is there, you can reference it. And I hope you enjoyed this one tonight. So this was session 2. I hope it's gave you lots to think about, and I'm pretty sure it's given you lots of reassurance that a lot of what you're doing already can, go straight down into that evidence. You get the time to organise it, of course. Okay, does anybody have any questions? That was really jam-packed.
It was. I've just popped into the chat an image that one of the local authorities, Falkirk, have in terms of screen time. They are a one-to-one authority, which we are not. But I just thought it's such a good infographic of what it means, that whole, passive transactionary, dispositionally, developmental,
Yeah,
and I just
oh,
think
very
it sums
good.
up really well. So that was
Uh-huh.
Kerry and Falkirk that came up with that
Oh,
one.
very good. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I'll need to get in touch with her and ask if we can share that somewhere as well.
yeah.
Nationally, yeah, that makes so much sense, doesn't it?
It does, and it really
Yeah,
offsets that kind of
mhm,
debate that people are
yeah,
having right now.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if we think about, how the care inspectorate encourage us, to tackle risk, it's that benefits risk approach. So
yeah,
you can see that clearly there. Oh, thanks
yeah.
for sharing that. Great.
No problem.
Okay, so I will share with Pam, I will share the slide notes. We've got all
Evaluation.
the information out, all the presenter notes are there, all the links are there. You're welcome to share them, download them, make them your own. If you want to even screenshot bits out of them for your validation, for your evidence, then by all means feel free to do that as well. There's also an evaluation that I need to ask you
Popped it
to
in the chat.
please fill out. Oh, thanks, Pam. That's great. When you get a moment, it's, you don't have to do it straight away. There's a drop down box that'll give you today's date and the session title, but when you get a moment, that would be great. And then in the meantime, feel free to send over any drafts of your strategies or any sort of drafts of planning your validation evidence. If you just want a sort of wee bit reassurance of should that sit here or should it sit there, we can have a wee look and sort of help you make that decision as well.
Absolutely. And I've also, so I've got all the slides, the evaluation as well, some of the links that we mentioned today, and I've put in the recording to session 1 along with, I just send it out again today, along with the slides and the evaluation from session 1, just in case anybody didn't manage to complete it. I'll send that out to you all tonight as well.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I hope you're feeling reassured, everybody, and that we can really take a much more sort of practical approach to this, and it doesn't have to be overly complicated. And please don't be put off by the wee bits of evidence that we looked at, that some settings were experiencing green screen and VR and AR and all that. That's great, but it's not for everybody and it's not always sustainable. So just think of that every day, that smaller pieces of technology, and then you're on the right track.
Thank you so much, Eva, as always.
Thank you.
Loads and loads of information, so helpful. Does anybody have any questions? And if not, we'll say goodbye.
Good night.
Yeah. Good
Right,
evening.
thanks very much, Pam. Thanks,
All right.
everybody, and we'll see
Right,
you
take
again
care,
soon.
everyone.
Thanks. See you later.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
Christmas. Bye.
Oh, that's right. I won't see you till January now, will
No,
I?
it's
Oh
not
my
till
goodness.
January.
Unless I see you at the NTN, there's an NTN December coming up, I think.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I
going.
think it's online though, I think. Is it? Is it online? Yeah.
It is
Okay.
online, yeah.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
I
Well,
will be there.
good
I will
stuff. We'll
see
see you then.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Bye.